Hello everyone, and welcome back to Turkish series stars. I hope your day is bright and buzzing, because what we're unpacking today is the kind of tale that keeps the entertainment world whispering late into the night. The label some fans have used, the alleged royal scandal, the eternal passion, has hovered for years around one pairing that won't let the public imagination rest, Barış Arduç and Elçin Sangu. We're going to trace the contours of a story that feels like it escaped from a screenwriter's loft, complete with volleys of rumor, long silences, and that elusive chemistry that seems to ignore the line between fiction and reality. If you're new here and hungry for the juiciest deep dives in showbiz, remember to subscribe to Turkish series stars, because we live for moments just like this. Let's set the scene with what everyone remembers. Two stars who lit up the same set, spoke the same language of glances and timing, and found a rhythm that millions recognized instantly. The supposed relationship between Barış and Elçin never needed much help to fill pages. The fanbase did that on its own, following every public appearance, every post, every snippet of behind-the-scenes banter with a detective's eye. They became symbols of a modern screen romance, and even those who claim they missed the phenomenon still know the photographs, the award night clips, the sweet, offhand remarks that launched 1,000 threads. But we're not here just to celebrate a professional connection. We're here to talk about what gave wings to 1,000 theories, the insistence from fans and gossip pages that there is more. Something deeper, wrapped in mystery, magnified by the lens of celebrity, and packaged with those very dramatic words, real scandal and eternal passion. With Barış and Elçin, the conversation has never been simple, never flat. It's been a whirl of late-night headlines, sudden bursts of speculation, and the kind of silence that makes people lean in closer. Their story in the public mind follows an unmistakable arc. It begins on set. A workplace that turned into a cultural event, an on-screen romance that felt startlingly alive. Viewers said their characters breathed, and the connection felt too electric to be strictly professional. It was the kind of heat you don't measure, you just know. And quickly, the industry grapevine did what it always does, it hummed. Magazines ran with it. Fan accounts stitched together timelines. Anonymous sources popped up with tantalizing whispers that could mean everything or nothing. This is where an important piece of the puzzle enters. Barış is famously guarded when it comes to his private life. Elçin is equally known for her poise and discipline, a woman who shows up, does the work, and lets the work speak. Together, they didn't feed the rumor mill with sloppy slips, they fed it with restraint, with those controlled moments where a look says more than a paragraph ever could. And that restraint only made the speculation louder. Very quickly, some outlets decided that calling them friends or colleagues wasn't enough drama. They reached for the most intoxicating language, painting the picture of a secret, all-consuming romance, an obsession that didn't just happen to coincide with their professional prime, it fueled it. And then, like fog seeping under a door, the word scandal entered the conversation, not as a police siren but as a murmured question: why would this be considered scandalous at all? Here's where nuance matters. The suggestion was never of illicit acts, never about proving wrongdoing. In fact, it was never about Xavier's infidelity at all, a confusing name that once floated through the gossip cloud and never had a place here. Rather, the speculation circled around timing, the idea that real lives, with real relationships and complicated breakups, were happening alongside the birth of an undeniable connection. You can picture it. Two actors riding the lightning of their success, handling personal transitions that would be hard for anyone, in a spotlight that can be both warm and burning. In that light, the whispers grew louder. From there, every step outside became a breadcrumb for the press. An after-party photo. A laugh caught at the wrong angle. An interview tease, a meaningful pause, a protective half-smile that could be your average human tick but, once uploaded, became a clue in a global scavenger hunt. Paparazzi followed. Stylists whispered. Friends of friends, real or invented, gave statements that sounded like riddles. If a text was liked, if a story was posted, if a comment was added hours later, fans catalogued it, carefully, endlessly. The audience eats this up not because they are cruel, but because the couple on screen felt like lightning in a bottle. People wanted to believe the glow didn't fade once the camera cut. And so the phrase eternal passion solidified in the fandom, not as a throwaway compliment but as a theory, that this wasn't a passing spark, not a brief, photogenic crash, but an abiding connection that survived noise and distance. Many swear they sense it in the way they still talk about each other's craft, in stray remarks that could be read a dozen different ways, in the warmth that seems to linger even when months pass without a public sighting. The idea of scandal, in this tale, has often meant collateral complexity, the perception that if this love was real, it might have intersected messily with other lives and professional balances. No solid names, no indictments, just the sense that a feeling this strong rarely arrives at a convenient hour. That aura of risk raised the stakes, making the story larger than romance and turning it into a saga about navigating fame, longing, and the relentless curiosity of a nation. Social media poured gasoline on every flicker. A single word in an interview became a week's debate. A wardrobe echo between two separate events became evidence. Even unrelated posts could tip the conversation back into frenzy. And curiously, other pop culture stories acted like mirrors. People compared their momentum to the frenzy that once surrounded Caesar, the OC-inspired hit that taught an entire generation how to obsess, invoking the names Yaman Cooper and Mira Bass as shorthand for epic screen chemistry. Some fans even joked that typos keep the fire alive, pointing to reverent throwbacks that misspell the same phenomenon as Mesosir. Over time, those little artifacts, Yaman Cooper, Mira Bass, Caesar, Mesosir, became code words for the level of intensity people saw in Barış and Elçin, even if the references belonged to a different legend. And that's how a curious side story emerged online, a hall of mirrors featuring odd monikers like Atay and Serenay, or strange composite names such as Atayaluso and Serini and Sarkaya, and even the tangled Ayuoy and Serin and Sarkaya. Fans laughed, rolled their eyes, and kept comparing. The message was simple. However the names twist in the rumor mill, the emotions people project onto these tales remain stubbornly the same. 2 stars. 1 bond. Infinite reading between the lines. What keeps this particular saga alive is the dual admiration for their talent and the fascination with what might lie behind the curtain. On screen, they've proven themselves over and over, funny, fierce, vulnerable, precise. Off-screen, they navigate a minefield with surprising grace. And together, whether they intended or not, they have inspired a long, persistent chorus of what-ifs. The scandal, in the end, feels less like a charge and more like a measurement of impact, of how thoroughly their connection has saturated conversation. We can speculate for years about the private beats of their story, the first moment a look lasted just a fraction longer than necessary, the conversation that made the room feel smaller, the goodbye that wasn't quite a goodbye. We'll never know, and maybe we shouldn't. But we can't deny what's clear from a distance. The perception of a deep bond between Barış and Elçin has refused to fade. It resurfaces, again and again, renewing itself with each new appearance, each tiny echo, each change of season in their careers. Maybe that is what eternal passion really means here, not a promise etched in stone, but an idea that survives, impermeable to silence. And when fans talk about a real scandal, they're rarely pushing accusations. They're measuring the size of the conversation, the way this story has threaded itself through premieres and interviews and years of evolving projects. It's the scale of the obsession, not some legal definition, that makes the phrase fit. Still, there's a human truth under all of this noise. Celebrities are people, with private lives marbled by joy and confusion just like the rest of us. Rumors are the toll the public exacts for adoration. And while we can't pretend the speculation isn't thrilling, we can remember that behind the edits and the hashtags are 2 working artists who owe us only their work. Respect for boundaries doesn't ruin the magic, sometimes it preserves it. Even so, you can see why the saga persists. The recipe has everything: star-crossed timing, a dash of secrecy, the impression of destiny, and a community that never stops reviewing the evidence. In the story of Barış and Elçin, each new project becomes a Rorschach test. Fans find what they're looking for, a glance here, a recommitment to craft there, and stitch it to the old narrative, renewing the legend as if it were a long-running series with surprise mid-season twists. So where do we land? The connection between Barış Arduç and Elçin Sangu, never confirmed in concrete terms and never fully denied, remains a perennial headline. What started as luminous on-screen chemistry grew into a years-long conversation about a bond that feels, to many, carved in deeper stone. The phrases royal scandal and eternal passion didn't materialize from nowhere. They are souvenirs from countless nights the audience spent replaying scenes, reading between pauses, and believing that what felt real on the screen might have been anchored in something real off of it. And while there are no files to pull, no definitive proof that would settle the debate once and for all, there is the unignorable persistence of the story. It doesn't fade. It doesn't break. It bends, evolves, and circles back, and every time it returns, more people understand why it never left in the first place. That brings us to our closing beat for today. Thank you for spending this time with me here at Turkish Series Stars, tracing the outline of a mystery that may never be solved and may not need to be. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the idea of an eternal passion between Barış and Elçin has been exaggerated? Or do you see the glints of something enduring that the rest of us have only guessed at? Does the phrase real scandal fit because of the sheer size of the media storm? Or is it a trick of the spotlight that makes ordinary complexities look extraordinary? Share your thoughts below. I read them all, and I love hearing how your perspective reshapes the tale. If today's deep dive stirred your curiosity, don't forget to like the video, share it with fellow fans who live for stories like this, and subscribe to Turkish Series Stars so you never miss our next journey into the beating heart of showbiz. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your hearts curious, and your popcorn ready, because the screen fades to black, but the conversation never really ends.